Welcome back, everybody. So this is your third and final question on family sponsorship for parents and grandparents. So we've discussed this quite a bit, but remember that the family class is very interlocked with each other. So when we looked at those economic streams, for example, of immigration, and if you haven't seen those, you're going to work your way through those lessons later on. Some of those are pretty stationary, so they're pretty independent, really. The self-employed program, for example, is completely different from almost every other economic program, and it doesn't really rely on any of the other ones. However, with family, you'll see some themes that really translate to all of the other ways in which a person can immigrate through the family programs in immigration. So a few of those programs that we've seen, of course, have to do with LICO, the length of undertaking, and basically who can and who cannot sponsor people. This question here is going to follow some of those themes as well, and just really cement in your knowledge of an undertaking and co-sponsors as well. Now here is your question. Omid and his wife Sundara co-sponsored Omid's parents for permanent residence under the family class in 2010 to live with them in Vancouver. Unfortunately, Omid's life took a turn for the worst around 2012. He lost his job, fell into a depression, and Sundara divorced him in 2016 and moved to Montreal to accept a job offer she received. Omid's parents eventually moved into their own apartment, but couldn't afford the rental payments since they had difficulty finding work. So they signed up for welfare, but only after they had gained Canadian citizenship. Eventually, Omid found another job in his field, and now he supports his parents financially by paying for their rent, while their government checks go towards supporting their family in Lebanon. Is there any issue with Omid's parents' financial situation? Now, when we look at the answers, we have A, yes, both Omid and Sundara are in violation of their undertaking. We have B, no, the parents are citizens and have all of the rights of other Canadians. We have C, no, because Omid and Sundara met the initial sponsorship requirements and can't be held accountable for what happens after the parents arrived in the country. And finally, we have D, yes, Omid is in violation of his undertaking. Now, as always, feel free to stop the video now and try to figure out the answer yourself. We'll go through the explanation, of course, for the rest of the video. Now, as always, we're going to take a look at the important parts of this. So, Omid and his wife, Sundara, co-sponsored Omid's parents for permanent residence under the family class in 2010. Alright, then we jump up to 2012, and poor Omid had a pretty rough time, so he lost his job. His wife divorced him in 2016. And his parents also moved into their own apartment. Now, his parents signed up for welfare, as we could see near the end of that first paragraph, but by that time they were citizens, so that might play a role as well. And you can see in the last little sentence here that I guess life got better for Omid, and now he supports his parents financially by paying their rent. When they talk about the government checks here, they're talking about those welfare checks. that the parents use to send to their family in Lebanon. Okay, so just to make this into an even more concise version, you can separate this into two big areas. Now we have Omid and Sundara together. There's a big reason for this, of course. We're going to explore that later on. Remember, they co-sponsored the parents. Okay, that was 2010. They got divorced as well. So we're going to see, if you saw the previous lesson on this topic, maybe you remember if that plays a role in a person's undertaking or not. We'll explore that through the context of this question. The other part, of course, is with the parents. So they're citizens now. They went on welfare. So we'll see if that plays a role as well in helping us choose the correct answer. And of course, they send that money overseas. So when we go back and we take a look at this question as a whole, as you know, we're going to start exploring the answers. So the question itself, of course, is there any issue with Omid's parents' financial situation? Now, the first one we'll take a look at is C. So we have no, because Omid and Sundara met the initial sponsorship requirements and can't be held accountable for what happens after the parents arrived in the country. So we're going to explore this one here. And hopefully you didn't choose this as the correct answer, but we'll talk about why, of course, this is an incorrect answer. All right, so in order to understand this, we need to look at two big concepts in here. One of them is how long that undertaking lasts for. So if you remember from the previous lesson, for parents and grandparents, it's a 20-year undertaking. They clarify this as well. So remember that even if a person loses all his money, if he gets divorced, moves to another province, that doesn't cancel that undertaking. So the undertaking in this case is for 20 years, and it doesn't really change for anything. But the second step in this is to take a look at Sundara. So she co-signed this undertaking for the parents. If you remember in the scenario, they said they got divorced. So what we're wondering, of course, is she still liable for Omid's parents, even though they're not married anymore? And as you can see, as we talked about in the lesson as well, the answer is yes for this. So the cosigner is valid, or is responsible for the parents in this case, for the period of the undertaking. And remember, with parents and grandparents, that period is 20 years. And of course, that cosigner is equally liable if those obligations are not performed. So with this, we can see that C is certainly incorrect. And in this question anyways, it gives us the key really to being able to answer the rest of the question. All right, let's take a look at B now. So B is no. The parents are citizens and have all of the rights of other Canadians. Now, this one's pretty tricky because, yes, a citizen is a citizen. It doesn't make a difference if the person's been in Canada for 4 years or if they've been in Canada for 40 years. And they certainly do have the rights of all the other Canadians. However, we have to look at this, of course, in terms of Omid, who sponsored the parents. And again, we go back to that question of an undertaking. So what exactly is an undertaking? Now, if we go back to the definition we talked about in the lesson on this topic, you probably remember that basically it is a way of ensuring that when a person sponsors, in this case, their parents or grandparents, those parents and grandparents aren't going to apply for social assistance. And just to reiterate again, this undertaking in this scenario with Omid is 20 years, and it doesn't change. So poor Omid went through a really rough time, but he still has this undertaking. This undertaking has to be fulfilled no matter what happens. So we could see financial deterioration, which happened to him, granting of Canadian citizenship, which happened to his parents, divorce, which happened to Omid as well, moving to another province, which happened with his ex-wife. And you can see, of course, even all of those together even does not cancel the undertaking. Now with this one, we know that B is not the correct answer in the context of this question, of course. If you just look at B without reading the scenario or the question or anything like that, you might think it's correct. But of course, we have to look at this in the context of the question that they give us. All right, let's take a look at D. So D says, yes, Omid is in violation of his undertaking. And again, we'll have to look at this through two angles. Now that first angle is, of course, to just help us define again what exactly is the undertaking. So we saw this before, and remember that essentially it's just a way of ensuring that his parents don't apply for welfare. Okay, and again, for parents and grandparents, it's a 20-year undertaking, and there's nothing really that stops or cancels that undertaking. That's the first part of this, of course. We have to look at the cosigner as well. So remember that his wife co-signed when they were still married and when they sponsored the parents. And as we saw before, remember that the cosigner is equally liable if obligations are not performed. And of course, this still counts even if they're divorced, even with anything. So in this one here, we can see that yes, Omid is definitely in violation of his undertaking, but we have to compare this to the next answer that we'll take a look at as well to see if it is the correct answer. So when you see D, yes, Omid is in violation of his undertaking, and you compare that with A, you can see that A is the correct answer, but we'll explore that anyways, just to again reiterate this point that we're looking at. In terms of D, if somebody didn't understand the cosigner and those obligations of the cosigner, they might choose D as the correct answer in this case. But for you, you went through the lesson and you understand both of those concepts, so what is an undertaking and the cosigner's responsibilities, so you know that D is incorrect. So let's take a look at A. And now with A, we have both Omid and Sundara are in violation of their undertaking. Now, if you remember, one of the first things that we did was when we were kind of defining that scenario a little bit more, we put Omid and Sundara together in this. And that's because really when someone is co-sponsoring their spouse's parents, in terms of your exam, you just want to think of them as the same person, really. They have the same responsibilities. in immigration. So that's exactly what you would do, is just don't separate them. Think of them together. And that's exactly what leads you towards this answer here. So we took a look, of course, at what is an undertaking anyways. And 20 years in this case, because it's parents and grandparents. Very generally, it's a way to make sure that when a person sponsors their parents or grandparents, those parents and grandparents won't go on welfare. The cosigner has almost the exact same requirements as the sponsor. And that, of course, is in the past and in the future as well, no matter what happens. Okay, and just to reiterate a point that we talked about in the lesson, let's pretend that one of these people, so Omid or Sundara, let's pretend that they wanted to sponsor somebody else. In this case, they would not actually be able to sponsor someone else unless they repaid that money. So the money that Omid's parents took from welfare, let's say Sundara wants to sponsor someone else, she would have to pay back that money before she can. So if you got this correct from the start, a very big congratulations. This question really tested you on two big elements of this topic, and that is the undertaking, so what's required in an undertaking, and we had that little element of the co-sponsor as well. If you got this correct, that shows that you really understand those two big aspects of the parent and grandparent permanent residency. So congratulations to you on this, and this is your final question in this topic, so hopefully you got the other two correct, and that means that the family class got just a little bit easier for you. All right, as always, a very big thank you for tuning in. If you got these questions correct, congratulations, you're one step closer to passing the full skills exam, and it's been such a pleasure talking to you. So have a really great day, and stay tuned for more lessons.